It made me reflect a little bit when I was reading that chapter. Your best relationship, whether it's with a vendor or with a customer, are the ones you're getting more value from them. A lot of people wouldn't do it that way.
Today we are kicking off a brand new series, the Never in Reverse Book Club. What a special book, The Go-Giver. This book, enhancing being a human being and putting your trust in giving to others first.
I had one previous business relationship with a gentleman. He hit me up. I got this big commission coming in. I'm really short on cash. Any chance you could lend me $5,000? I said, I'll give you $6,000. I gave him $6,000. Then he ghosted me. I could never get a hold of him. He never paid me back. And unfortunately, he passed away.
Today, we're going to have a special guest, Ken Ely. Him and I are going to dive into the book in 5 chapters and just spin off our ideas and experiences around those chapters and shining lights and stretching within that personal growth around the core level of giving to people.
Try not to let it make you jaded to helping other people. That can be very challenging when you get burned by somebody. And it's not just monetary. It could be your time, your talent, you're helping people out. And some people feel entitled that they should have gotten that.
Welcome to the book club, guys, and we really appreciate you jumping on this journey with us. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Never in Reverse podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Axel. Today, we are going to be jumping into our first ever book club. And the book that we have is called The Go-Giver. Joining me today is a gentleman out of the Northeast, Ken Ely, coming from Ohio. Ken, welcome.
Jeremy, thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Love having you, man. The Go-Giver, to me, Ken, do you feel like it was something that was practical that you could bring into the real world with you?
Yeah, I think it's something that, resonates with me. I mean, it's kind of just a different take on strategies or thoughts that have been around for a long period of time. So it just reiterated some things for me that I thought were very relevant.
Yeah, I agree. I think just taking that young man, I believe his name was Joe, just through a process of, I'd say, just a lot of selfish nature that we all have, right? Like there's this innate, I think, selfish behavior that we want to achieve, right? And there's a different way of doing it, but we're gonna break it kind of down into sections of the book. And the first topic of this book was the law of value, and the core idea of that was your worth is determined by the value that you give others, and not always necessarily what you achieve. And what are your takes on that, Ken? Because that's I think there's kind of a longer period of you just have a different duration of time sometimes to let that kind of infiltrate into your network.
I think it's really relevant in our industry in a B2B type of environment where it's a very consultative type of sale. We're not selling widgets. We're not going to our customers and going, do you want A or do you want B? We have to go and meet with, and you know this, Jeremy, we go out, we meet with our customers, we analyze their needs, we come back to them with recommendations. Sometimes it's a scenario of it's good, better, best. And you present that to them and help them analyze that. And I think that kind of resonates in the law of value. If you're very good at consulting with your customers and you can present different options to them, and then you also address it from their point of view, it isn't always a matter of how much equipment can I sell this person. It's what's their problem and what's the best solution. And ultimately that usually plays out into the best return on investment for them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that there's always been this, like my experience in the workforce and just in life is there's this, what can you provide me next? And I think there's this, if you provide enough value to anyone in your network, I think there's this, I don't know if it's generational wealth, but it can become that if you kind of pass that down to your kids, if you decide to have kids. I think there's just your network, and if you can create enough value without having to request things in return, I think there's always like this exponential rate of return that you can't necessarily see because it might not be like a financial thing. And I think that the workforce, sometimes the value that you provide isn't necessarily given, it's not based off of time, right? Some people they can provide a lot of value in a short amount of time. So it's kind of this, you kind of got to walk a fine line, especially as being a leader, right? You got to realize that, man, that guy did that in 5 hours. He's very talented. I was hoping it's going to take 40. I mean, is that big of a problem?
I agree.
I mean, that's sometimes hard. I struggle with that, right? Like, I'm like, well, you're here for 40, but you're doing it in 5, but the next guy can't do it in 5. He's doing it in 40. So it's like this man, what a talent. And then the selfish part of me sometimes is like, well, yeah, but we can go do more, right? Like, let's go do more. So I think there's this fine line. I find there's a fine line of um, giving someone that's very value centric to someone or a relationship the ability to have that leniency, and that's kind of a fine line, I think.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's very true. I mean, you've got people that go through the motions. I've had salespeople in the past that they would just go and I called on them, but they didn't really accomplish anything. The customer didn't have a specific need or a specific problem. They were just basically, we used to call it a milk run for your younger generation. They actually had people that delivered milk to people's houses,
Wow. Yeah.
back in the day.
It's like a paper
Um,
boy.
well, exactly. But, we don't, I mean, I guess there's still some areas that exists, but it was that philosophy where you're going to go and I'm going to see this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. But that's not what we do, at least in our business. You've got to work with your customer and analyze their needs and provide that value.
Yeah, and I think this give them the reins of impact versus exhaustion, right? Like instead of someone making, I'm a firm believer if a guy can make 5 calls and sell the same as a guy that makes 120, rewire and figure out what that guy's doing on the 5 calls to have the impact, right? The next section of the book was about law of compensation. Income follows how many people you serve and how well you serve them. Instead of always putting, sales guys, myself included, I used to always put financial gains at the forefront of my effort, meaning that, man, I just got to make more calls, more calls, more calls, and it'll generate X instead of worrying about how I serve those people. So, what do you think about flipping that and saying, hey, if I can serve people without an expectation, the results will come with a compensation that's independent of that? Do you think that's something that you have seen or experienced before?
Yes, I definitely think that's true. I mean, I've had customers that call us up, looking for specific pieces of equipment or they're looking for the lowest dollar, option. And I've told people we're not the low cost provider in the space. We're the
Mhm.
value added provider. And I've coached it through our whole organization. Um, all the way, I think a perfect example or an example, maybe not perfect, is we had a young man. He's still here. He's been with us for 5 years. But when he started here, he was in charge of housekeeping and sweeping the floors and everything. And I told him, I said, Logan, you have an official title. He goes, I do. I'm like, yeah, you do. You're the ambassador of first impressions. And he's like, well, what does that mean? I go, well, think about it. When we bring a customer in to look at a piece of equipment, what's the first thing they see? How clean our shop is. So you're that ambassador. And he got a big old smile on his face, and he's been moving up through the ranks. He's now a field service tech. So
Wow.
um, yeah, it was
Yeah, and he doesn't I mean, he probably does now, but the impact of that, service, I think that just there's always indirect impact that sometimes you can really provide this high level of service in your network, and it will typically go outside of your network independently of you if there's enough value in that. Just like the book was saying, like the guys that created the hot dog stand and he had the number one, basically the best business model out of the entire area from a hot dog stand because of the service that you provided. He got all the kids to come in and go, man, I'm gonna bringing their moms and dads and dragging them there, and then their friends come in. And so just, I think that, that's when the power of the service extends beyond the reach of yourself. Next topic of the book was influence without authority. Influence comes from putting others first. What are your thoughts on that? That's a tough one. That's, yeah, you got a lot more wisdom than me, but I'm still learning this, right? Like really putting an authentic way, putting someone above yourself, even in the workplace.
there used to be a motivational speaker named Zig Ziglar. I don't know
Mhm.
if you've ever heard that name or not, but
Yep.
I was a big fan of his. And he used to have a saying that little things don't mean a lot, little things mean everything. And I always took that to heart that when a customer has a birthday, birth of a new child, or something along a significant life event, if you acknowledge that, even if it's just something as simple as a card, um, people appreciate that. People appreciate being valued. And the only way you can accomplish that is, if you show them that value. It made me reflect a little bit when I was reading that chapter on business relationships that we have, both with vendors and with customers. And I, you could, if you look at it and you step back and you analyze it, you find that your best relationship, whether it's, like I said, with a vendor or with a customer, are the ones where you're getting more value from them. Yeah, you're a perfect example of that. You are, spot on. We had an issue with the lubrication system on one of our conveyors, and you took the ball and ran with it, and you solved the customer's problem. That was above and beyond. A lot of people wouldn't do it that way. I know a lot of vendors that would just say,
Not my
well,
problem.
yeah, not my problem. They'll figure it out. So
Yeah, and it
that is,
wasn't, it's not that big of a problem, but to that consumer, he's like, "Man, I spent a decent this is a CapEx piece of equipment, number 1." My ex, I wasn't thinking that it was sitting there for a period of time. We all forgot, and I just said, "Hey, man, listen, you spent enough time on it already. If we find there's a problem again, just give me the length. We'll cut you new lines and you can go." But because you and I could be spending a lot more time than it's worth to make him happy, right? And I think there's the backside of that, and that's where I think that fundamental if you serve those people in the right way, the backside is 10x. And I've seen that over time and time again. Have you seen someone in your life outside of business that has had that influence on you as a person, just putting you first or making you feel like you're super special in life? Do you have anyone that has done that to you and made you go, "Wow, that this exists still"?
yeah, boy, that's a good question. I'm hard pressed to think. The first person that comes to mind is actually my primary care doctor. I've been with him for 20 years, and as you know, I had some bypass surgery last August, and I was going back in for my annual checkup, and he came in and he was so excited. He's like, "The system worked. Oh my gosh." And he gives me a big hug, and it was just, I knew he was genuine. He was glad to see
Yeah.
me. He was glad to see that our course of treatment paid off and everything. So I think that's a good example. I mean, obviously he's a doctor. He cares about people, but a lot of times in today's medical world, people just go through the motions, and you're on a timer, and get you through as quick as you can and get you out the door so I can see the next patient.
100%. Yeah, and those moments stick with you. I think just those get ingrained into you as a person. I've been lucky in the last year to have a bunch of, I'd say, very authentic, deep experiences with some other men in my life, and just starting to see me who I am, and I think you tend to strip down all of the things that we've been told to show, right? And just so you can become yourself and let them see for who you are. And that's pretty, for me, that's cool. Go into the authenticity part. This is something that is kind of, I'm on this phase of just trying to embrace the authentic side of myself at the deepest level I can. They say that the biggest thing that you can offer anyone is just your true, like you as a person, right? Your true self. And that's hard because we've been taught to, let me be the CEO. Let me be the good golfer. Let me be the guy that I can be great at sports, or look at me, I'm super successful. And if you take all that away, right, like there you are, and it's like it's hard to get to that sometimes, but that's where I've been really working. So this area is kind of hit home for me. What do you think for you? Just being super genuine for you. Have you ever had a chance in your life to just really be you in the business sector? Do you feel like you've had that ability?
Occasionally, I think you have to keep so many, kind of keep your guard up or have
Mhm.
different facades depending on what, I can tell you that, as the president of the company, my leadership, I do try to be very genuine with my people. And, quite often, well, this happened on Monday. I had one of my service guys had an issue with his direct superior, and I pulled him aside. And we took a little walk and we talked it out and everything. And you could just see that and he even said it, "Man, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me about that." But that approach doesn't always transcend over to the sales side or to dealing with the vendor side, because there's some suppliers that you just, they're out to squeeze you for every bottom dollar they can get, I think. And you have to guard against that. So sometimes you can't be as genuine as you want to be, or as transparent as you want to be, because you have to keep that image up, if you will.
Yeah, and that's tough, man. I think that's one thing I hope we start seeing a shift on in the workforce is just being real and like seeing that person through the and being okay with it instead of putting all these imaginations or expectations on people, which I do at times, just allowing them to be who they are. And if we can work in a more honest, like where if you can be open to something, hey, we're a little bit late, and they're not just pounding you. Like
Yeah.
this is happening to me right now because of FedEx hit a motor and a gearbox, and it just put this downstream effect on some assembly. And I hit him up the month it happened because it had a torque limiter that we're testing out on it, and it was a very specialized part that we had ordered extras from Germany on, and we had to ship it to Nord and get it all the way to get it all assembled, right? And I was open it. Well, it took like a week and a half to get it back, and well, now you got stuff just stacking, and I now they're just on me every single day, and there's no like I'm like, "Well, I shouldn't even have told you. I should just say, it's I think there's this gotta be this balance of humanity that needs to exist, but the big corporations are squeezing down. They're not looking at people as typically as a value add. You and I get the luxury, I believe, that we can still kind of embrace some of that, in our culture and just see people for who they are. But it's not easy. It takes I think it's a rewiring. And the final of this book is the law of receptivity, the willingness to receive. And man, I am not good at that.
Yeah, I would agree. That was the biggest challenge, or what I would, if I had to identify, where's your biggest weakness out of these 5 chapters, or these 5 laws, that would be mine as well.
What do you think you struggle there for?
Well, like I just said a minute ago, it's you got to have this image, this facade, you don't want, I think when you're authentic, that you can sometimes present to some people a vulnerability.
Hmm.
And if somebody sees a vulnerability, not everybody, but some people would take that and play to that weakness, if you will, for lack of a better term. So you constantly have to guard against that. And your point is spot on. The bigger the corporation, we deal with, some Fortune 50 companies, and
Hmm.
the terms, these are our terms, this is cast in stone, but we're the value added provider. We're nice guys, like, we don't care. There's another dozen nice guys right behind you that will go work with if you can't take care of this.
Yeah, and I think the ability I struggle, Ken, on the receiving, and I think it's because I don't necessarily like to be seen. I struggle with that, like in a weird way, like when it becomes too connected, like almost in an intimate way. Like I don't like awards. I don't like to get up and I don't want someone to say, "Hey, man, you got sales rep of the year," when I've got it. I like to sit quietly, and I think I've shared this with you many times. I like to be under the radar. I just like to do my thing quietly, but provide the value along with it. But I think it's, you know, my team always tells me, like, "Hey, man, it's okay to celebrate. Like, accept that." And I'm like, "Gosh, dude," but my celebrations are like next, and that's a growth area. That means that I need to grow in there. I need to be able to accept that from other people when they see that in me. And I mean, you too, right? Like I think we all. I think this is a man thing. Honestly, I think I know a lot of men that struggle in this area to receive, because we are the providers and all these things that we've been told, and we're not the greatest at receiving. But the guys that are, I've seen the guys in my network that I'm like, man, this guy he graciously receives something and does it with no I'm probably really awkward. Like, "Oh, don't you don't wanna give me that." Or I make a
Right.
comment or I joke with him, like, make fun of it in a way to flex it off of me, right? So, that's a big learning curve for me. I mean, the you cannot create flow if you don't allow others, to give you. So, and I think it's just a mutual thing. Even if my wife, I struggle with that, like, hey, when she gives me a comment, I'm just learning to, like, take that in as it is and just be okay with her seeing me. right? And before I'd be like, yeah, whatever, I just brush it off. And so that's something that's been a journey for the last 12 months for me, is just starting with her. Let's start with her and allow her to give me a comment that's I can see that she sees me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, while we wrap this up, the generosity versus boundaries, couple things. When did helping turn into being taken advantage of for you? Is there any times in your career or your life where you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna go help someone," and then you got burned? Many times. It took me
You're
a
gonna
long
have
time to
to
get.
you're gonna have to expand the time frame for this this review.
Is this the first one for 1 hour? Let's get to it, Ken. No, but I think that's what I mean, I can see that in you, and I think that I called on you for a long time, and it took a long time because I think there's so much of that. Like, this
Oh,
guy's gonna,
yeah.
you get this relationship, you're like, even if it's an 8 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10, is it worth the risk of being a 4 out of 10? You know, it's that's tough, but can you share a couple things that you've gone through just in life where you felt like you put your neck out for someone and it bit you?
Yeah, I mean, it's, we used to give payroll advances when the company was smaller to people, and we moved away from that. So I tend to be a generous person, so I've had people that have came in and, I need, a couple $100. I need this, I need that, we'll give them a loan. We we had one of our service techs, his personal vehicle was down, so we let him drive a service truck back and forth to work. And fortunately, no negative experiences came out of that. But I've lent people money and they haven't paid me back. I had one previous business relationship with a gentleman. I'd rather not use his name,
Yep.
but he was sales manager of one of the companies that we sold for, and he kind of retired, and he hit me up. And this is how dumb I am, Jeremy. He said, "Oh man," he goes, "I got this big commission coming in. I'm really short on cash. Any chance I got to make an alimony payment? Any chance you could lend me $5,000?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I mean, I'd hand this guy my wallet and would,
Yeah.
and, I go, "Is that gonna be enough?" This is how dumb I am. I asked him, "Is that gonna be enough?" He said, "Well," I said, "I'll give you 6." I gave him
Keep
$6,000.
it I would have been like,
And
"Keep it coming, Ken, come on."
no, and then he goes to me. I could never get a hold of him. He never paid me back, and unfortunately, he passed away. So that money went down the drain. But that's a prime example
Yeah, and I
of
think it's okay. I think that those moments, I don't know if did you let it go? Because I've had stuff like exactly like that happen to me, and I used to hold on to it like, "Man, I can't trust you," and then it's like, "You know what? If the struggle is that deep and real for that person, I'm good." Like, and don't
yeah.
ask.
I think there was the backstory was substance abuse problem. I
Yeah.
suspect. I've never been able to confirm that, but you're right. You got to let it go. And you try not to let it make you jaded to helping out other people. Um, but that can be very challenging, when you get burned by somebody like that, and it's not just monetary. It could be, your time, your talent, you're
Mhm.
helping people out. And some people just they feel entitled that they should have gotten that, or they feel like, you've got enough money, you don't have to worry about that, you know? You'll survive. Well, it's not the point. It's the principle of being a good person and following through on what you say you're gonna do. And look,
Yeah.
I understand, stuff happens, um, circumstances change, and maybe you can't repay somebody right away, but at least be forthcoming and say, "Hey, I can't give you 100, but here's $5." You know, just
Yeah.
show good faith.
Something.
Something.
When he's out there buying a new pickup the next week. I had that happen to me, so I can relate, and you're going, "Wow, let me see here. So basically everything that I did for you means nothing, and then that's when I just started, I was young at that time. I remember the exact moment, but I think overall the book for me, if we wind down here, is that there's a lot of good structure to being generous, and I think that there's to have no expectations as you give. I think the recap for me is like, man, just give as much as you can without expecting, and that could be tiring for me. It could be anyways. Um, but and allow that to blossom over time. I mean, I think if we continually do that in every area of our life, I think we're gonna have an abundance of something, right? It could be financial gains, it could be love, it could be relationship, all of that. So, any other recaps for you, Ken, on the book for the viewers?
Like I said, it was kind of a different take on themes that I've read in the past, but it was a good refresher, if you will. I've already ordered a couple of more books. I'm gonna give them to our sales team and our support team, let them read up on that. Um,
Awesome.
the fact that you can get burned by some people when you're generous with your time or your treasure or whatever. Um, I try not to let that change who I am. I still want to be authentic and I still want to be generous. And,
That's awesome.
sometimes it falls short, but you do the best you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we take off, who would you recommend to read this book? Who would be a good person that you think it'd be an honor to read the book to or recommend to?
I think, Jeremy, anybody that's in the business, in the B2B world or B2B space where you're in a consultative type of sales situation, this really rings true. I think it's very relevant. If you go into a situation and you you're forthcoming and you're genuine, you give that time and effort and everything to people, maybe you don't get that particular sale, but they will remember you. I've actually had that happen. I lost a deal to a competitor and I told the customer that bought it, I said, well, I appreciate the opportunity. If I could ever be of service down the road, I hope you'll keep my contact information. He reached out 6 months after he got the equipment that he
Mhm.
bought from the competitor, and he said, "Were you sincere when you said that?" I said, "Of course I was." And he was having some real operational issues that we were able to step in and solve them for him. So that
Absolutely.
being genuine and forthcoming with people does pay off.
Well, thank you, Ken. I appreciate everyone that's jumped in here with this today. And if a challenge presents itself, just sit in that moment with you and in yourself, and just I think you got to challenge yourself. Let the challenge sit there and figure out ways that you can allow growth to be in that uncomfortable moment. You can find our podcast Never Reverse on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the social media applications, etc. So, Ken, thanks for joining us. Jeremy Axel of Never Reverse, Ken Ely, Ely Enterprises, the man, Ken. Thanks, dude. Appreciate
Thanks,
you.
Jeremy. Good to see you.